this one's actually an audiobook review, because I've still, at least a little bit, been listening to audiobooks, but much less so since I got furloughed. But this audiobook, to quote or copy how you would say it if you had a book like in hand, I could not put it down. I stayed up till like 2 in the morning one day listening to it because I was just like, I need a good place to stop and I can't find a good place to stop. So yeah, I really liked this one. So the one we're going to be talking about today is Only Mostly Devastated. I was watching The Irish Reader, I think is his account name, from BookTube. And he was talking about his read through of this book and said it's basically like a gay version of Grease, which sounded intriguing to me. I like the concept of turning a musical movie into a book just in general, and I have been trying to branch out in my reading and find other perspectives like the gay perspective in my reading, since that's not the way that I swing, but I want to be able to understand that perspective and that sort of thing. So I got this from my library as an electronic audiobook, and as I said, I couldn't put it down. It was really awesome. I don't know that I always found the correlations to like the Grace plotline and or songs, but it was really fun. I had a few little qualms with it, like we do start sort of with the end of summer thing, like in Grease, where our main character and he's met Will and they've had their like summer fling, and we open up with our main character finding out he's going to be staying in North Carolina, which they'd been vacationing at like a lake there. Because his aunt is sick with cancer, and so his family had been helping out his aunt. Specifically, Ollie, our main character, had been watching his aunt's kids a lot over the summer, and his parents decided we're going to keep staying here because her cancer seems like it's getting worse, they need some extra help, etc. So that's kind of the motive of him staying in North Carolina, but what he doesn't realize is exactly where Will lives, basically like how Sandy doesn't know where Danny lives, or that he's at her school, because Will lives in a different city but goes to the same school as Ollie, and Ollie didn't realize that like the school he went to served multiple cities basically, because it's kind of more of a small town area, is kind of the impression I got. So all of like that set up pretty straightforward and common to it, other than like the aunt with cancer. I actually felt like that was kind of a nicer excuse for them to end up at the same school. Although I guess in the original movie it's just that they were both on vacation and then she ends up going to the same place as him, I think. I don't know. I'd have to watch Grease again. But yeah, I did really enjoy the element that the cancer brought to it, in that you're kind of wondering throughout the whole thing if his aunt is going to die, and the way that it impacts the story, I feel like allows for some really good character growth and things like that, and helps motivate some of like their reconciliation and stuff when Ollie gets a little frustrated with Will at times. So that was nice. I really liked that element. One element that I didn't really like, though, is that we do know about the summer, but you don't, like, start with any scenes from the summer, and then, like, sprinkled throughout the book, there were scenes of the summer, which were a little confusing for me every time they came up, which is probably partly that it was an audiobook, so it's harder to distinguish between those things. Like, a lot of the time, if you have, like, a past sequence in the middle of your novel, you'll, like, italicize it or something, but you don't really get that experience in an audiobook, and unless they've also, like, labeled it as back in the summer or something like that, it can be hard to switch back and forth. So I was a little confused, like, every time those came up, and it took me a minute to be like, oh, this is back in the summer, every time that they did it. And also, I just didn't feel like it added anything to be like, here's what their romance was like in the summer compared to some of the frustrations that they're having now. You know, and I didn't really feel like it added much to the story to have that. but maybe that's just becoming a thing more and more that I don't like, because I also don't like the frame story thing. We've talked about that now, and so maybe I just don't want flashbacks in my story in any format. I just want a story that runs straight through, which is fine. Everyone has their own tastes. But to be fair, the scenes were fairly limited, so it didn't bother me so much that I wanted to stop reading or anything. But yeah, so let's see what else to talk about. Let's talk about some of the connections to Greece, I suppose. So we do get a scene that's kind of like Summer Lovin'. We only get Ollie's perspective, so we don't get any of like the back and forth like in Summer Lovin', where Sandy and Danny are telling their story about it. We get a reference to what Will says about his summer, but he implies that he's had like a summer fling with a girl kind of thing to his friends, because he's not out to his friends, but Ollie is very out. Even on like the first day of school, basically everyone knows that he's out, which is fine too, you know, especially moving to a new place. That's something that Ollie didn't want to have to deal with, was being like, I don't want to hide it, I just want it out there. I don't want to have this conversation over and over kind of a thing. And so he meets this group of girls who become his friends throughout the story, like the Pink Ladies do for Sandy. And they are like talking about their summer flings. And they're like, oh, Ollie, have you had a summer fling? And he accidentally outs Will to them because he doesn't know that Will, A, goes to his school, or B, isn't out yet. So, in the original Grease, you get that scene where the Pink Ladies know that Danny's at their school and Sandy doesn't, and they take her to like a bonfire thing or something, and she meets Danny there and is like, cold shoulder from him and stuff. And then the girls in the book do basically the same thing, but they give reasoning for it, and it kind of makes sense that they do it that way, especially getting their reasoning, because Will isn't out to his group of friends yet and that sort of thing. They want him to know that Ollie is there so that he can do damage control if he needs to, and they obviously don't know, since Ollie's brand new at the school, if Ollie's going to be the kind of person who just talks about that kind of thing to everyone and accidentally outs him to more people, that sort of a thing. So that was them kind of looking out for Will because they were friends with him already. And then, like, a lot of the romantic conflicts I felt like were better handled in the book, because we do have Ollie who is out and Will who is not, and so it made sense, some of the different shifts in personality that you get with Will. Like, he can be really sweet to Ollie when they're in private, because Ollie knows that he's out, obviously, but his friends don't know, so in front of his friends he's got more of that macho behavior like Danny had, and so it kind of plays off of that, and it makes sense of why there's those things. I mean, I still don't know if it's entirely justified, and Ollie does get frustrated at some of the macho stuff, because Will's friends do joke about Ollie being gay and stuff, and he's not very comfortable with that, so it felt like it gave really natural conflicts that way. One of the other connections to Grease that I noticed, or I think is what it was going for, one of Ollie's friends, she plays the clarinet and has this big audition coming up that she's gonna try to get into college with, and she goes and thinks she's really successful at it, and then she gets the results from the audition back, and she didn't make it. So I think this is supposed to be like the correlation with Beauty School Dropout, because she gets really depressed over it and doesn't, and frustrated by that. But then ultimately she has an arc where she's like, I'm going to audition again because they'll do more auditions and I can try to get in again. And that's kind of the arc of Beauty School Dropout too. So, I don't even remember her name. But the one in Greece, she gets frustrated with school and wants to drop out. She goes to beauty school and wants to just drop out because she messes up her hair and whatever. And then it's like, just go back to school. It's okay. You can take your time to get into this career kind of thing. So it's kind of that same correlation. A lot of the other songs, I don't know that I could tell you where the connections are. The You're the One That I Want probably has a fairly direct correlation to the end of the story. Because spoilers, they get together and Will outs himself, but they're at like this basketball game, and Ollie had originally said he wasn't going to be able to be there, but then it was like this big championship type game, and he realized how important it was, so he kind of put off his plans for the night to watch the game. And as part of that, Will realized how much Ollie cared about him, that kind of a thing, because they'd been having kind of a rough patch. And so at the end of the game, after I'm pretty sure Will also scored like the winning shot, he runs up to Ollie and he just kisses him in front of everybody and outs himself. And so I feel like that's probably the same thing as in You're the One That I Want, but I guess technically switching the rules, since Sandy changes for Danny, but in this case Will changed for Ollie by outing himself. So that was fun. And then also another spoilery thing, but that I feel is worth mentioning. Since we do have the aunt who's got cancer, that ends up playing a huge role in the story because she does end up dying. And Will and Ollie had been having a bit of a rough patch because Ollie felt like Will didn't appreciate him and was just kind of playing a game with him because he was still hanging out with his friends, being all macho and not just admitting he was gay when they were joking about things. And had some rough patches based on that. And then Ollie's aunt dies, and his instinct, I guess, he's like driving around aimlessly, and he ends up at Will's house and is like, I just need you, Will. And they sort of reconcile over that, and then they completely reconcile over the kiss at the end. So yeah, so it was a really fun book. I cried the death stuff, but I mean, I've had family members die from cancer, so I could relate really strongly to a lot of that. And it was just good storytelling, because at the same time that it did help ultimately reconcile them, when it first happens, you're like, oh no, he doesn't have Will to go to right now because they're in the middle of this fight. And he does end up going to him, but it's not the same as when you are already comfortable in your relationship and something like that happens, and you're able to just immediately go to them. And so I was just in tears. But I really enjoyed the book overall. As I said, I did stay up till like 2 a.m. listening to it. I didn't finish it at that point, but I only had like an hour left when I got up in the morning after that. So, yeah. Anyways, I really enjoyed it. I hope you look into it too if you're looking for something a little different. The Grease elements were really fun. But that's all I've got for now. This is Matt Harper signing out.